The Global Child Protection Working Group, the international coordinating body for protecting girls and boys in humanitarian settings, has produced a video series on the minimum standards for child protection in humanitarian action. These minimum standards, also known as the CPMS, were developed through widespread interagency collaboration. They are part of a global humanitarian standards partnership, which includes Sphere, INEE, and others. This video examines Standard 8, Physical Violence and Other Harmful Practices. For other installments in the series, please go to the CPWG's website. In every country and culture, girls and boys are at risk of experiencing physical violence from adults and from their peers. They also face harmful practices such as child marriage and female genital mutilation or cutting. In humanitarian settings, children's risk of exposure to these and other forms of violence increase in the home, community, and school. More and more children in conflict zones are also subjected to extreme forms of physical violence. These may include killing, maiming, torture, abduction, or being used as human shields. In addition, armed actors have carried out direct attacks on schools and hospitals, further exposing children to significant risk of injury and death. Standard 8 reads, "Girls and boys are protected from physical violence and other harmful practices, and survivors have access to age-specific and culturally appropriate responses." This video focuses on children's experiences of everyday violence and harmful practices in humanitarian settings. For more information on other forms of conflict-related violence, go to www.childrenandarmedconflict.un.org. Let's hear some of the experiences of child protection practitioners.
What we have seen is that there is increasing violence. So whilst 3-4 years ago when children first arrived from Syria, the primary thing that we were dealing with was post-traumatic stress or stress from the violence that they had lived from the war that they were fleeing when they came here. Now they're settled here in very difficult conditions, and those conditions are putting intense pressures on the family. So children are actually growing up in incredibly violent households. This is immediately reflected in the schools. When you go and you ask school teachers, they'll tell you the Syrian children who are in the second shift are the ones who are experiencing the most violence. It's not because they're naturally violent, it's because the stress just continues to go and go and go.
The combined factors of poor living conditions, disruption in economic activities, loss of income compel families to adapt negative coping mechanisms, which put children at risk of trafficking, labor, and child marriage as well. And girls are particularly at the risk of these child protection issues. Child marriage viewed by the family as a mean to prevent their girls from the risk of sexual violence, as well as a mean to reduce the economic burden.
Although the risks of physical violence are known and are believed to increase in humanitarian contexts, precise prevalence rates are difficult to determine. This is due to the large number of cases that are not reported to the authorities. In fact, in many emergencies, there is simply no functioning system to report to.
Vulnerability to children in a protracted crisis is a fact that the government structures and other protective community structures have broken down. So the community is actually vulnerable to a lot of shocks that affect them. And the girls and boys and even their caregivers have absolutely nowhere to report some of the problems that come up.
However, an example in post-earthquake New Zealand points to how a resilient system was able to capture a 20% increase in reported child abuse cases. Boys and girls' reactions to physical violence vary. However, research suggests it increases their likelihood of experiencing both short-term and long-term negative effects. The impact might be on their health, education, and social and emotional well-being.
It not only have a short-term impact on the child development, but may also lead to problems in the adulthood. Corporal punishment or the violence from the parents at home affect the physical and mental development of the children. It also results in poorer social relationship with the families and the peers.
the social acceptance of some forms of physical violence against children is a major factor in its continuation. Yet there are proven strategies to alleviate this suffering and break the cycles of violence. We need to build or strengthen existing child protection systems in order to promote effective and holistic prevention and response mechanisms. One way of doing this is to work with people closest to the child, such as families and community structures, and to link these to the formal child protection mechanisms.
Community groups need to be trained on these referral mechanisms so they can refer the children to the appropriate services. These services need to be age and gender appropriate and sensitive to the children.
Developing interventions to address harmful social and cultural norms is an essential prevention strategy. It is also a way to increase the level of community support to survivors.
The only way to work on it is actually to work very closely with the community. And then within your community, you need to really figure out which influential group you can work with who can make a difference in actually changing the attitude and the practice.
Prevention and response measures can be woven into case management systems, training for teachers and school administrators, as well as the programming that occurs in child-friendly spaces. Another approach to prevent and respond to cases of violence in the home is parenting skills training. This entails a series of structured or semi-structured sessions led by child protection workers or trained peers. The goals are to provide parents and caregivers with support and concrete ideas to reduce stress as well as to develop positive parenting strategies. For example, in one program in northern Syria, 78% of parents who participated in skill sessions reported a reduction in their use of violent discipline.
Now, the parenting skill sessions increases awareness regarding the psychosocial distress. It helps parents to cope with the stress better and enhances the parental-child relation by using certain techniques.
We need to not just work with children. We're going to have to try and address the overall family, the violence as a family as a whole, if we really want to be able to support children going forward.
A strong child protection system is equipped to prevent physical violence and other harmful practices, as well as to identify and respond to cases when they occur. This requires us to work closely with other humanitarian sectors, collaborate with relevant stakeholders across different levels of society, and mobilize a broad range of actors, including children themselves.
So basically, you need to really look at the community and work with the religious leader, work with the youth group, work with the teachers, work with the health systems, and work with the legal system, because it has to be kind of a multi-sectoral intervention which involve all the actors in the community.
To address physical violence and other harmful practices, we need to mainstream child protection into the wider humanitarian response. The mainstreaming standards in the CPMS provide us with good guidance. Here's one perspective from Lebanon.
If we really want to impact children's lives and the violence in the family as well as at work, we need to look at livelihoods. Here, we've seen that there's an increased violence in the family. This is a direct result of families not being able to feel safe, earn a living, and be able to provide. And so working in those sectors to be able to provide families with greater livelihoods or youth with more appropriate livelihoods is a key link that we have to make if we want to be able to respond to violence against children.
Tackling physical violence and other harmful practices in a humanitarian setting can feel overwhelming. However, it is our fundamental duty to protect girls and boys. With carefully planned interventions, we can prevent and respond to this issue. Minimum Standard 8 provides us with many concrete steps and considerations. Other installments in this series focus on how to use the CPMS and on the specific standards for addressing needs. The CPWG provides support for applying the standards, such as mainstreaming briefs, guidance on contextual adaptation, and training packages. For more information, please go to cpwg.net/minimum-standards.